A child can be bullied about anything, and some things are obviously unimportant, but mostly everything's unimportant. For instance, as an obviously unimportant thing, they can be bullied because they're too small, because they're too tall, because they've got red hair, because they've got black skin, because they've got spots. There are endless things that a child can be bullied about, and mostly they're not important in themselves. So what you don't want to happen is for your child's behaviour to start perpetuating the bullying. Okay, so they need to stay confident that they are fine. And if perhaps they are doing behaviour that isn't appropriate and that doesn't endear them to their friends, so for instance, being competitive. Now that might work with one group of friends but wouldn't with another group of friends. So and the reason I'm saying this is because always in the final instance you can choose to move your child's school. Now I know that creates a huge amount of upheaval, but I'm just saying that's always an option at the end. And by the end, I mean when their behaviour, when you've tried to do everything about it, you've tried to keep their confidence strong, you've tried to let them see the positive sides of themselves, but their work, for instance, their academic work, is deteriorating, or you can see that the character that they're becoming is detrimental to living a fulfilled and happy life. They're crying every night, they're too anxious, they're self-harming. There's all sorts of ways where you can see something is definitely not working, and then I would suggest changing the whole school. But before that point, and it's always good to try and catch this at the very beginning, and I know it's hard, especially as quite often your child's behaviour, you see part of it in how you were, and maybe you overjudge yourself, or maybe you judged yourself, or maybe your parents judged you for that very behaviour. So it's very easy to get drawn in yourself to your child's feelings, and to say, well, yes, that kind of behaviour isn't very nice, and yes, let's do something about it. You just need to try and be really careful of that, because to then further judge your child is not going to make anything any better. There's one thing you can do that will always work and that's never wrong, which is to bolster your child's confidence, to let your child know who they are and to let them know what are their good qualities, so that whatever they're being bullied about hopefully will pale in significance. Perhaps you think by bolstering your child's self-esteem and their own characteristics could make them overconfident. That perhaps you think that's their problem, they're already overconfident. Well, if you try and bring them down all the time, they might polarise and become even more confident. So in a way, any bigging up of their attributes is good, especially if the ones that you do feel truly positive about. But even try and look at the other ones and try and talk about them in a positive way, and look at them in yourself and see them as a positive thing in yourself. Let's think of things we can do as an initial thing that's not going to affect their position in the class or in the school too much, and won't affect them and their insecurities or confidence in a negative way. So a thing you can start by doing, and I know this is difficult if you're working full-time, but you can always rope in a friend, an older sibling, a grandmother, and so on, grandfather, is to go on school trips, to join in the school kind of life. So you just get a general feeling for what the atmosphere is like. This again is difficult. You know, it's difficult to be sensitive towards these things, and it's difficult if you don't know how schools normally are. But it's always good to try and get involved. But it's very important not to actually interfere, especially at this stage. So just go along and have a look, or send someone else along to have a look. The other thing you can do initially is to talk to the teacher. Not to tell the teacher to intervene, just to tell the teacher to just keep an eye out. Another person who's quite important is the people who are on watch in the playground. You can just say, look, can you just keep an eye out, see if anything's happening? obviously talking to your child is a very important start, and trying again not to get drawn in. So if they say nobody's playing with me, or they're ignoring me, so don't, say, what are you doing wrong, or oh no, how awful, because it's not necessarily a bad thing. And if at that stage you can tell your child to enjoy their own company and to see what's good about themselves on their own, then people might start to come to them. So if they're always concerned that that's wrong, that it's wrong that people aren't playing with them, then they're going to be more desperate to go out and find people and maybe to follow people around. So try and help them to become centred in themselves and to know that they can perhaps play a game on their own, go and talk to a teacher, clean out the classroom, do something that makes them feel confident. Eventually other children will come to them, especially like-minded children, and that's what you want. You want your child to find the friends that suit them. Another idea is to get the group of friends, or the group of people who were their friends, your child's friends, together. Now, of course, you can invite them back to your place, but that doesn't always work, and you could be worried that that might further the bullying, especially if it's about you don't have as many things in your house, or your house is too small, or anything. Then you can get them together in the park, or anything like that. So then you can just see what the interactions are like. Bring other parents along too. Of course, that's at primary school stage, that's much easier. Secondary school stage, it's different. Generally, schools have something set up for this thing. Not always, and that can be an awful problem. But if you just ask questions, who deals with interactions between children? Sometimes it's not even a good idea to mention the bullying. This is in primary school. In secondary school, I think the policies are usually more in place because of greater problems with self-harming, drug abuse and so on. Then you go and talk to them. They're going to be well experienced. If you've got a particular worry about their friends finding out, you just tell them that. A good thing to remember is that if your child is being bullied, or even if they're just unpopular at the moment, it will, in fact, if you deal with it and they deal with it in the right way, it'll actually stand them in good stead for the future, because at some time in everybody's lives, something happens where you feel you're not popular, or you suddenly feel like you're being dropped. It can be for any reason. Let's say interest change. Someone has a baby, your friends all have babies, you don't, or you have a baby no one else does. You haven't learnt to drive, you didn't go to university. There can be any reason. So in a way, if you've been there to support your child during this phase, it stands them in really good stead for the future, because they know how to go back into themselves, to be centred and to be confident on their own. And then it's just about being patient and living through that time that's difficult. And if it gets bad, or your child's behaviour or work or anything starts deteriorating, then leave. That's the time to move. But first, just be patient, let them keep centred and carry on, just giving them confidence and being centred. Get advice from the parent, from your child's school, and please ask teachers to just keep an eye out. Of course, they could be being bullied by the teacher. So there are all kinds of problems that can come up. And the main thing is to keep your child centred in their positive attributes.